Is going. So, hello everybody and welcome to Talking About Survivor. I am Christiana Ellis.
I'm Mike Mateen.
And tonight we are talking about Survivor Winners at War, episode 11. I feel like it seems crazy to me that we're so deep into the season. I mean, obviously, when I think about it rationally, I understand that nothing unusual happened about it. But I just sort of, the idea that we're coming up on, the home stretch of the season feels strange.
I think time in general is just kind of odd right now.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
feeling that we're working in like 1 to 2 week cycles as a planet.
All of our normal life routines are kind of disrupted in many ways right now, which makes our normal ability to process how much time has passed, you know, thrown
Yeah,
thrown into disarray.
right. Because something like this, it feels like we got here really quick, but then something like working from home feels like we've been doing it for 6 months, and it's only been like five or 6 weeks, or at least for me.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like there's different things where your time things are so relevant. Like, I mean, yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
but we are that deep into it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. So let's talk about this episode. It's kind of interesting, I think, that we kind of finished last time talking a lot about Tony, and then Tony was really kind of like the focus player in a lot of ways in this episode, kind of driving a lot of what happened.
yeah. I mean, I don't think it's jumping. I mean, it is jumping ahead, but I don't think it's a secret that he's definitely the MVP.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it would be hard to try to make the case for anybody else, really.
Right.
Um, he just accomplished a lot in this episode. I mean, I think Sophie was playing an okay game. I'm not sure she was the biggest target necessarily to go out right now, but just in terms of having things unfold according to his designs, he's doing a
Yeah.
really great job.
Well, that's what I think that it was an interesting choice because I don't necessarily disagree with it because I think there's been a couple of times that we've even talked about how she's a little underrated. She even
Mm-hmm.
underrated herself, like in her closing thing of like she's like, oh, I thought I was in the lower tier of winners, but it was cool to prove that I could hold my own. Like she was definitely holding her own, and that's, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, again, like the what went wrong for her, I think was that she it started to become more evident to people,
Yeah.
that she was playing pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously other parts went wrong, but
Yeah.
that's why she got picked by him.
Right. Well,
Part of the reason
so
why I think he's the MVP
yeah.
because go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, like, to some extent, that's where jumping ahead means something different with our current format, right? It's like it's not jumping ahead to talk about something that happens later in the episode, but it is jumping ahead to talk about one of the later segments.
I'll stop.
I mean, it's not really a problem given this this format, but it's just funny that you specifically framed it that way. But so let's talk about favorite moment. What was your favorite moment for this episode?
So, I mean, a lot happened in this, but I still have
Mm-hmm.
to go back. I think my favorite moment, and I'm gonna cheat a little bit here and make it an extended moment
Okay.
because it's the whole arc from Parvati and Natalie deciding that they're just gonna absolutely make somebody go broke with
Mm-hmm.
this extortion thing, choosing Tony, then his excitement thinking he was getting to extort somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But then his reaction when he realized it was on him was still like so jovial and like he just took it in stride. And it was
Yeah.
just, so the whole thing from like them being so like devious, like that was fun. But like, and you remember why they're winners. I mean, they are, and why they're considered dangerous because that was just, I mean, not,
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you have to do. Like, it's like almost sociopathic in the way that the game works and where you just like disconnect yourself from like caring about stuff like that. And you're just like, yeah, let's get as many as we can out of him. Like, let's make this really painful.
Well, right, and not even just about as many fire tokens as they can get, although that's like a bonus. But it's almost more about like how can we cause the most disruption
Right.
back there. So let's pick a chaotic player generally in Tony, and just really squeeze him. You know,
Right.
make
Somebody who we
him.
know doesn't have 6, who is going to have to now go to other people in this chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, yeah, I mean, I thought that whole thing was brilliant what they did, and it was just kind of like you watched like Parvati kind of laugh at the end with this sort of like villain laugh, and then it goes to Tony sprinting through the jungle and with his bag like falling over.
Mm-hmm.
He's reading this, and he's like, "I get to extort somebody," and then he's like, "Oh, extortion's illegal."
Mm-hmm.
So that had to be my favorite moment, even with all the other stuff that happened, which was great in this episode. Like that, still that little arc there. I mean, it was only, I don't say it's that extended, but it was like 2 scenes, and it just combined, they made such a great moment.
Sure. Yeah, well, certainly the moment of him realizing in slow motion what the thing he's been given actually is pretty hard to beat. But given that you just picked that one, I'm going to go other end of the spectrum and talk about Sarah's clothing line and fashion show. Which, obviously was just a bunch of nonsense about them just playing around to pass time there at camp. But I liked how into it they all got. And, I mean, I don't know that those clothing designs looked terribly functional. But I doubt we will see them wearing those a lot in the remaining episodes. But it was fun watching her kind of just... I think I laughed out loud at the moment where she says, a lot of people look at me and just think how she's really funny and smart and pretty, but I'm also really creative. I'm just like, this is not to diss or criticize Sarah, but I mean, that's a hell of a line. Like, oh yeah, people think I'm really smart and pretty and funny, but I'm also creative.
That was pretty good.
I liked that, and so, but making the clothes just seemed like fun, and then like persuading everybody to actually kind of get into the fashion show of it, just as a game to kind of play around. I thought that was a lot of fun. So it certainly wasn't one of the big moments from any kind of a strategy standpoint, but I enjoyed it. But yeah, so what about biggest surprise?
Biggest surprise was Tony deciding to go, like choosing this moment. Like it doesn't. I mean, it makes sense. Like I get why he did it. Like I'm not saying it was a bad surprise. It was just not something that I could have predicted was going to happen. It was to go and have this plan that seems set, but it reminds you, like, you should never be content with the safe plan because somebody's going to jack it up, and
yeah.
So like I said, I still think that was my biggest surprise. I just did not expect him, when it was somebody that he had planned to vote for last time, was available to vote for, and he was safe. He went a different route, and I respect him for it. But it was surprising.
Yeah, I think my I hesitate to call it the biggest surprise because ultimately it didn't actually play out the way it made it seem like it was going to. But just the whole sequence where we end up with Tony had come up with a way to save Jeremy, who was otherwise doomed, and was just trying to explain it to him. And Jeremy's like, I don't know, man. That doesn't sound right to me. I think we're going to go with the original plan. And I'm just sitting here, I mean, like on the one hand, sitting in Jeremy's shoes, I get it. Like, is Tony the person that you feel like is the most trustworthy when he comes to you at the last minute and says, we're changing up the plan to save you and here's what you need to do instead? Like, I get it. But I mean, it's kind of a good thing that it could have gone another way. Actually, that makes me just want to look up the vote totals. the but yeah, that just whole sequence of finding Tony in the situation of actually sincerely trying to save Jeremy, but being disbelieved about it. Right?
Yeah,
So,
and I get, I mean, I kind of, you're right, it was surprising. I mean, you sort of see where Jeremy's coming from. Like, number one, Tony is not, I mean, he is somewhat chaotic, and it just seemed kind of, and he timed it in a way to make it kind of, like, I mean, I like how Tony did that, though. Like, don't give Sophie any chance. Don't give anybody any chance to bring this up. Like, catch him right at the end. Like, the only person who knew before that was Nick.
Right.
And
well,
so,
I mean,
you had Jeremy like coming at him like last minute like that, and Jeremy just wanted to feel comfortable, like not having to change a plan. Like there's sort of that, like I felt like I'd already made this decision, like not wanting to, almost like in denial about the information. So I kind of get it, but you're right, it was surprising. He was like, "Hey, here's exactly what's happening, and here's how we get out of it for you." I don't know. I like the original plan. Well, the original plan gets you voted out.
Well, yeah, but the problem being that it's like, but I don't believe you about that. I feel like you're trying to trick me into changing my vote for reasons. And I don't know what those reasons are. I don't believe you when you tell me what you say they are. But Michelle also would have had to know because there were 4 votes for Sophie. So Jeremy, Tony, Nick, and Michelle.
But when he was talking to Jeremy, he asked if Michelle knew yet, and he told Jeremy he needed to tell Michelle because he didn't want to be seen talking to her.
Yeah. Okay.
But
yeah,
he didn't
you're
know
right.
at the time.
Yeah, you're right about that.
So going into tribal council, like or whatever that 5 minutes before, it was only Nick that knew he was going to do it, and then he dropped it on Jeremy and Michelle like that.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, like they did believe him because they went with the plan. But just executing that, like, I think we could potentially get into an armchair quarterbacking discussion of, is it really in Tony's interest to save Jeremy in favor of Sophie? I don't know. I mean, that's something that could be debated, right? But certainly in terms of deciding to make a plan and then following through on it and making it work, he did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, I think in Tony's mind, it was like making a move when he felt safe, knowing that Jeremy had now been on the table twice. He probably is.
That's true. Yeah.
Like it doesn't. I feel like you can still get Jeremy at some point, is what he's thinking. And to just kind of go along with the flow doesn't make him. At this point, like I feel like he's got as good a shot of anybody at winning if he can make it to the end of the end. And it's not just getting rid of Sophie, but it's the way that he kind of maneuvered the whole thing. Like when everybody else was sitting there talking about how the last tribal council was mentally exhausting and nobody wanted to do anything. Like Tony's out there finding idols. He got people from different alliances to give him fire tokens to save himself.
Yeah, well, that was
it was immunity that he was able to buy with their tokens.
It was perfect demonstration that his attempt to play both sides did actually work because people from both sides contributed to his cause, right? So, which was, I mean, that's pretty impressive. So, let's talk about other highlights. What were other things that kind of stood out for you?
Well, one of them was going to be the fashion show thing, which you already mentioned was your favorite moment. And I had to wonder about that, if it, not that exact thing, but if stuff like that happens more frequently and they just don't normally show it, but because now we can sort of relate to why you would do things like that when you're isolated and bored.
Yeah, no, I
I,
get it.
I feel like it made. I mean, I think it was more interesting probably than some of that stuff, but I think also that they chose to lean into that because of the audience. So that was good. I mean, uh, we talked about everything Tony did. I mean, it was all good. I thought. I mean, the whole scene where they were comparing Nick to a vampire was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's
And
pretty
whether or
good.
not that was like a compliment or an insult, and it was
Mhm.
seemed kind of like they left it. They were kind of
Well,
ambivalent.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it it's basically it's like situational, right? It's sort of like whether it's a compliment or an insult is context sensitive.
Right.
But we also have the irony of the early scene where Tony is trying to pretend to Jeremy, Kim, Michelle, and Denise that he's actually with them. When we know from his confessional that at that time he was not actually planning to go with them. And successfully fooling Jeremy and Michelle, but not Kim and Denise, only for later him to concoct a plan that's actually with Jeremy and Michelle. So like he took his original playing both sides, haha, I'm pretending I'm with you, but I'm actually a double agent, and then deciding, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll just make that one the real one after all. um, that I thought was kind of fun.
I mean, yeah, and also at the beginning, like I forgot the sort of weird argument between Jeremy and Ben was kind of interesting
Mm-hmm.
when they came back and they like argued like with each other about who was the bigger threat, and like that was funny, which
Mm-hmm.
also led to Jeremy, which was I think probably one of my funniest things reading Dalton Ross's column this week is so Jeremy later says like I used to really like Jeremy. I thought we were buds, but now every little thing he does just annoys me. And Dalton Ross's joke is like, I'm pretty sure that's how my wife feels about me during quarantine. And it was funny.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was a weird argument between them about like, no, you're the biggest threat. No, you're the biggest threat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
So we also didn't talk. We talked about Tony, but we didn't even include the him finding the idol.
well, yeah, I said that was part of like.
Okay, well,
But anyway, we didn't talk about it. You're right. So
okay, you kind of decided to include 15 minutes of the show as your favorite moment. So, but like getting the extortion thing wasn't even like the idol was a completely different separate scene,
yeah, that's what I
right?
was saying. I was talking about how when I was talking about how he could be a potential winner. I mean, that's when I talked about the idol was because when everybody else was saying how mentally fatigued they were,
Oh
he was
yeah,
out hustling and getting idols and stuff. So
okay.
that's what I said. We didn't really talk about it. I was just saying I wasn't trying to say. I just like kind of
Mm,
mentioned it in that piece,
right. But the
not as part
whole
of my favorite moment.
yeah, but the whole bit where he has Nick the vampire creeps up on him again and is like, "Hey, dude, we hunting for idols? Cool." It's like, "Yeah, how about you go check by the water and I'll go over here and then we'll meet back." And then he's like, "Yeah, I already looked by the water. That's why I sent him over there." um, that's good. And then it wasn't a long sequence, but it was an interesting moment over at Edge of Extinction where we have Tyson and Wendell talking a little bit about the psychological toll of losing a game on a show like this.
Mhm.
I thought it was a little weird for them to be just idly speculating that it's going to be hard for Adam. Like, we're doing okay, but it's going to be hard for him. And I kind of feel like, does Adam not get to a say in this conversation? You're just going to have the edit imply that they're right about that without talking to him? I don't know. Yeah, let's have the edit show him looking forlorn at the sale a lot. All right. um, let's see. What else do we?
which is funny because that's kind of just how Adam looks a lot of the
Yeah,
time in general.
it's it's kind of like Elijah Wood. He just has the sort of an eye shape that makes him look a little bit concerned all the time. Um, the so I'm trying to think. So obviously we had the challenge, right, for immunity plus 2 tokens, and just and again it was just like Tony finds the idol, gets the extortion advantage, and manages to pull off getting all those tokens, wins the challenge, gets his secret blindside uh, plan to vote out someone who had an idol, even though he didn't even know that.
Yeah, and I think and one of the subtler things from that I think they didn't spend a lot of time on, but him winning, not just winning the immunity, obviously allowed him to do a lot of things, but by getting those other 2 fire tokens,
Hmm.
and then not even considering not repaying some of his debt.
Hmm.
He mentioned that he's like, "Oh, I can not only do I get immunity, I can repay part of my debt," and it's like
Hmm.
by just instinctively doing that, like there's a waterfall effect later on when he's actually trying to convince people because he has he has proven himself to be trustworthy
Hmm.
at that point to the people to multiple sides. Like he's continuing to both sides this thing. I mean, I don't. It's going to be difficult now, but also things are kind of blown up now. He sort of threw a grenade on everybody's alliance, so now it's going to be, and it was already going to be clear that Denise and Kim weren't with Jeremy, but they thought Jeremy wasn't going to be there to know they weren't with him.
Yeah. Hmm.
And now he's there and knows they're not with him. Tony is
Right.
a
Yeah.
chaos agent. It's
Well,
like
well, right. Like that's the thing that Tony has done well in this thing is that he did have a secret plan where he betrayed some people who thought they could trust him, but the way it kind of blows up is not necessarily spun by everyone as being just a Tony thing that now they want to target him for. Although the preview makes it look like, in my notes it says Michelle is furious with Tony, but that can't be right. It must
Sarah.
be Sarah. Yeah,
It was
yeah.
Sarah. Yeah,
I was going to say it shouldn't have been Michelle. Sarah makes much more sense.
yeah,
Um, just wrote it wrong. Um, but yeah, so uh, obviously he wants to have on the resume that and I feel like Sophie obviously wouldn't be happy for being voted out, but I feel like she is the sort of player who can like appreciate the well played move of getting we talk sometimes about how when there's votes where it's going to be either person A or person B, and so then just because you don't know whether it'll be A or B doesn't mean it's a blindside. But when it's Sophie and she had an idol in her pocket and didn't play it because she had no idea she was even in danger, that's a blindside.
yeah. True blindside, and Sophie's personality. I think she ultimately, like she even kind of said, she's like, "Oh, I'm kind of sad, but I'm glad that I could hold my own." And I think this was the ultimate, like, as silly as it is. I mean, everybody, Tony was safe.
Hmm.
There was a plan in place, and Tony decided that it was more important to get rid of her than to maintain that plan.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, it's kind of sad, but at the same time, like, you have to feel kind of proud of yourself, putting yourself in a position where, one of the, where big players are coming for you on a blind side.
Hmm.
I mean, and I think she'll obviously I think obviously she would prefer to still be playing, but I think she'll settle into that as kind of a nice. I just think her personality seems like she will appreciate that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So
She does just has always seemed like someone who appreciates the finer points of the strategic game
yeah,
and the social game, but like in the context of how are you playing the game and not just how are you nice to people. Although she seems nice too, but just like she seems to like that aspect of the game.
yeah,
And that's what she was doing really well, but not so well that Tony couldn't see her as potentially a danger. So, all right, so We kind of already, we certainly both agree that how could you pick anyone but MVP, Tony for MVP. And as for Sophie, I mean, I'm not really sure that anything did necessarily go wrong so much as just like her good plan. I think maybe all that we could really say that went wrong is that she continued to believe that Tony was on her side. Right?
Yeah, and the other thing with her is that her gameplay is predicated on making and influencing moves without kind of rising above to become like a target.
Mm-hmm.
But still engineering a lot of things, which is how she wins, because when it gets to the end, like, you can't say she wasn't an active player, but the whole thing is that her game is all predicated on you not figuring that out until it's too late.
Yeah. But, as we talked about too, at a certain point, you do have to start kind of trying to do things, at which point it becomes more obvious that you're doing things and so on.
Right.
Yep.
So again, it's sort of that hard thing of like, and it was harder for her this season than her original season, because these people are a lot more astute and could figure out that she was starting to make moves quicker. In her first season, like, it was just she was doing the same type of play, but people were always behind the curve when they by the time they realized that she was making the moves, they were the ones that were getting gone. And she did that a couple of times on this, but eventually, like I said, these guys are just too good. They're going to figure it out. And she had started to bubble up a week or two ago on some people's minds. And then Tony, I think that's where he used this opportunity. But so it's again, like, how do you say that went wrong? I mean, that's how she played. Like, that's her personality. That's her gameplay. It just didn't click in, just like Rob's is the way that his is. And, he played the way he knows how to play, and it didn't work out. And, they obviously had some shots like lingering on her face, like almost like she was contemplating using the idol whenever they were talking about like blind sides.
Right, but yeah.
But so it's like, could you say what went wrong if she didn't use the idol? No, I mean, you wouldn't. Well, in this situation, there'd be no reason for her to do that.
I mean, obviously, knowing everything there was, but
right.
Given what she had the ability to know, it comes down more to not seeing that Tony was actually working at cross purposes, right? Because this is everyone who plays with her strategy has to do that gear shift, that mode transition from I'm playing low key and mostly in the background, influencing things, but not making big dramatic moves, to the point where, okay, now I'm going to start making moves, but that'll start attracting attention. That's a tricky transition. And it's not that she did it poorly in this case necessarily, except that as she started to attract attention, she was not able to determine where the threat was coming from until it was too late.
Right, and you think about like the calculus you have to start doing there, and it's like, okay, so obviously you think you have the plan to get rid of Jeremy. The backup is if he plays something and messes that up, then Michelle goes. Mm-hmm. But then you say, okay, well, what if the people I think I'm with aren't actually with me, and we're not really the majority? Well, then you're going to default to probably Ben is the one that is next. Like if they had flipped it, like, because again, that's who they wanted. That's who Jeremy and them wanted originally. Yeah. So then you go to them, and then you're like, okay, well, then what's even the fourth scenario? And it's like, well, Denise has been come up a couple of times, and Kim has come up a couple of times. Like, I've never really come up. Like, if you're working through all that, you got to say, I'm like the sixth or seventh option. The risk reward versus using the idol at that point, even if you do all that calculus, it just doesn't make sense. Didn't make sense from where she was sitting, it sucks to know that happened to you, but that's it. The credit is more to Tony and the way that he made sure that there was no way that there was any breath of that becoming that she was on the block, like she would even be able to consider that she was on the block. Like he handled that phenomenally.
Right.
There's some luck there. Like he had to trust Nick, wasn't going to go behind his back and try to mess something up or whatever. He knew Jeremy and Michelle had to do it.
Well, so here's one question that I think is maybe will be interesting, or maybe I'm just missing something. But Jeremy's plan, what he thought was going to happen, going to tribal council, was that he thought he had Tony, Denise, Kim, and Michelle to help him take out Ben.
Mhm.
But Kim didn't vote with that plan. So the plan wouldn't have worked even if Tony and even if Tony had stayed with that. It would have it would have been 4, and then I guess maybe it's still 4 might have been. Let's see.
Okay.
4
Yeah,
might have
yeah.
still been enough, but Kim voted for Michelle.
Right, she was supposed to.
But what I'm saying is Jeremy's plan.
Yeah, Jeremy's plan couldn't have worked because Kim and Denise weren't with him. Neither of them voted with him.
Okay, well, oh, all right. That's what I was trying to say.
Right.
Okay. So, okay. Fine. I guess I was trying to talk through something you thought was obvious. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to be like that. You're right. I thought it was obvious, so I'm not trying to be dismissive. I thought that was the whole point, was that he thought them two were with him and they weren't, and that's what was making it hard for him to understand why his plan wasn't going to work, and why it's going to be even more complicated when they go back, because they both betrayed him, and now he's not gone. So 2 people he thought were in his alliance voted against him by voting for Michelle, but they didn't go with his plan.
Right.
And now he has to go back. Now they all have to go back and figure out how to work together or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That was part of, because that was part of like what I was thinking through when I thought about how much chaos Tony had created with this. Like that, I thought was almost like a bigger thing, even than just getting rid of Sophie.
Right.
Was that he exposed that where all the people really were voting, and except the person they thought they were going to get out now has to go back to camp with them because he saved him.
Right, but Kim and Denise only did that because they believed they couldn't save Jeremy because they didn't believe Tony was with them. Kim talked about how like she knows Tony's feeding Jeremy a line. She wishes she could but couldn't save Jeremy. Jeremy was going to go either way, so she didn't want to be on the wrong side of it.
Yeah, you're probably right. My notes were just that, Kim and Denise were never with Jeremy. They were the ones lying to him. So
Okay,
I just sort of
we took notes on different parts of that because that was not true before. What it was is that Jeremy, Kim, Denise, and Michelle were 4. And Tony was trying to say, hey, I'm with you guys. And Jeremy and Michelle believed him, and Kim and Denise did not believe him. Right. And so because they didn't believe Tony, that's why they felt this is doomed. We can't save Jeremy. We need to go to the other side.
Right. Yes. No, you're right. That's accurate.
Okay. Anyway, it all happened anyway. So yeah. I mean, I think that's. What about? Do you have any room for improvement notes going forward? We kind of had some for some people who didn't take it this week, or were not able to implement.
Yeah. So the one note I had on that, again, it's like I feel like I'm stretching though because I'm choosing it out of the scenes from next time, which is, Sarah needs to kind of pump the brakes there and realize, like, this happened. Like, you can't just say, like, you ruined my game. Like, things are going to happen in this game. Like, and again, it might just be an edit, but it's like, that's my advice to her is, like, you need to adapt. Like, it doesn't matter if you're, maybe she is just frustrated and she's venting off on him and she will adapt, and that would be the right thing to do, but that would be my,
right.
It's not really room for improvement, but it's just advice. Other than that, I would, at one point I thought it was going to be to Jeremy that you need to like make sure you're, you know, listening when people come and tell you stuff, but he did
Mm,
ultimately. Um,
yeah.
no, I mean, I think everybody, I mean, Tony just, he blew this thing up so quick and so surgically
Mm-hmm.
that it wasn't really like anybody's doing anything wrong. Like,
Right.
I'd almost was be more concerned for Nick in how he's going to defend why he went along with him, and how Nick's going to then make his own mark.
Yeah, Nick is. I feel like I don't see Nick as in danger, but also not as distinguishing himself as
Right.
a player that deserves to win.
Right. So it's more of a long-term room for improvement as
Yeah.
opposed to like save yourself next week by improving this thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So he's doing okay at the not have the spotlight on you, but that we're getting close to the end now. So you know.
Right. At the same time, if you're the guy who just enabled Tony's machinations, like that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
really make you a winner.
Right. Well, and then, but so oddly enough, the advice of do you trust Tony or not is would have been good advice for some people and bad advice for other people in this episode. Right? And it's not even it wasn't even consistent over the course of the episode because he literally changed his mind more than once throughout the episode.
Yeah.
So it really even isn't. It wasn't even a case of like, oh, I knew all along that he was always going to betray me. It was almost more like people trying to call on a coin flip, right?
Fair.
Because
Yeah.
it's really ultimately neither of them should trust him, but at a certain point, the fact that well, I guess Jeremy was in a position where he thought that Tony was with his alliance, and so it wasn't like the enemy coming over to tell him. But it was a little bit like, the third mate telling the captain, "Actually, you want to steer over there. Just trust me on this."
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. It's true.
But yeah, so I think my advice for Jeremy is that as much as I certainly understand why he wants to be kind of driving the game and making these decisions, I think that every time he gets in danger, it's kind of because he is pushing too hard on that stuff. And it's tricky because you've got to be able to make the moves, but I feel like his name keeps coming up sort of in direct proportion to how much he's really trying to move things. But he keeps trying to move them sort of in a subtle way where I wonder if maybe he really needs to start just like, you know, let the cloak fall away and try to be the alpha player. I
Yep.
mean, people are certainly already looking at him as a target, so but we'll see. So, I guess that'll probably do it for this time. So we'll be back next week for more talking about Survivor. So take care of each other until then.
Yep.